This is the Committee of the Whole Administration and Finance meeting of January the 7th, and it also will be the first budget meeting of 2019. We'll deal with the other items on the agenda before getting to the budget, or the budget presentation, or let's call it the first draft of the budget. So, call the meeting to order. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Goodness, I'm having a tough time tonight. Jack,
Yes.
Mr. Bradley, and seconded by Councillor Cameron. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And then item number 3 on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Are there any disclosures of interest here this evening with this agenda? No. Hearing none, the minutes will show that there were no disclosures. Item number 4 on the agenda is delegations and presentations. We have none this evening. And item number 5 on the agenda was discussion item of retail cannabis, but I think we're going to, in view of the public meeting that we just held earlier, we'll curtail that discussion and hold that discussion on January the 21st when we deal with this issue one final time. So I'm moving to item 6 on the agenda. Item 6 on the agenda is 6A is severance application B 12618 and 12718. Now, by the way, just before I go on, everybody has the briefing note that was supplied for the retail cannabis discussion. So make sure you bring that with you on January the 21st. It is just for information purposes.
Can I,
Yes, go ahead.
with regard to that discussion, if applications are due January 9th, I'm making that assumption, and there are any of our residents looking for guidance as to whether they should be filling out applications. I know we were planning on making a decision on the 21st because the date is the 22nd, the last opt-in day. Would it be reasonable to at least have a discussion on this tonight so that anybody that might be looking to make an application before the 9th, if it's chosen that it opts out and they've made an application, it's kind of redundant for them to apply if we opt out. By not making a decision before the 9th, we're limiting or tying people's hands. They wouldn't be able to go until the second round.
I see what you're saying, Deputy Mayor, but the province, you're talking about an application for a store.
Okay, so just hang on 1 second, because I don't want to get out of sequence here. What we're really talking about is the order of the agenda here right now. The Deputy Mayor wants me to go back to item 5 on the agenda, which I skipped over in view of the discussion that we had, in view of the public meeting that we had just a few minutes ago. Now, my read of that public meeting was that there wasn't a great deal of interest from the public in us opting out of the program. And I haven't heard that kind of a sentiment from any member of council during all the period of time since the election. So that's why I guess in my mind, it's more or less a done issue. Now, if I'm reading council wrong, and I'm making my reading on the basis of other discussions that we've held at other times, I'm almost of the impression that January 21st is going to be a very quick discussion. But if you'd like to discuss it further here, right now, we can do that. We have the briefing note in front of us. Is there any particular point in the briefing note that you'd like to reach?
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me,
Well, you're the one that wants to deal with this issue now.
well, it was on the agenda.
Yeah,
With all due
that's what I
respect.
said, yeah.
Yeah, so, I really, in my opinion, I don't think that there's any other option other than opting in to opt out. I think says that we're not open to business. I think, you know, it's legal in Canada, it's legal in Ontario. You know, prohibition hasn't worked in the past. There's lots of ways to look at it, but quite simply, it's just whether or not we're going to allow a storefront in the municipality. I've heard a lot of different discussions regarding morality and you know, legality, but I haven't heard any actual reasonable arguments against why it shouldn't, why there shouldn't be a storefront for sale. It's already for sale in our township, illegally. It will be for sale legally in our township through the OCS, the Ontario Cannabis Store.
It is now.
It is now, yes. It's being delivered to our post office. It will be delivered to people's houses as well. And we have approved for the industrial park, Purple High Farms, to actually be a producer of it as well. So I just want to make it very clear where I stand as to the opt-in part, or the you know, the emphatic opt-in part, and continue along and show what you've shown in the last several years, that we really are open for business and that we accept all business.
Are there any other speakers for this discussion item?
I just think, Mr. Mayor, not think much of discussion other than the fact that it was brought up. Should we send a letter saying we are opting into it? And I would be in favor of seeing council put it forward, but we are opting in, but we're not just being not opting out. We are opting into it, because I think if any of our residents do want to apply for a residential license, I very much doubt it makes any difference in this round, because we're given 25, so obviously they're going to be, not likely going to be in small rural municipalities, the first bunch of license, but at least that would maybe give a little stronger opinion from anybody applying for a license out of our township, that the council has said, yes, we're in favor of it, we're not just accepting it as a fait accompli that we going to happen anyway type thing.
Okay, so I have two speakers that would prefer a strong motion to opt in come January the 21st. That's the way I'm reading this discussion. Anybody else want to weigh in on this item?
I will as well. I concur with the other two candidates, and I would support it opting in. However, that being said, I hope the township is going to have some kind of policy made up to deal with when someone. How it's going to happen is that the province, the people apply to the province, and the province will put it on their website. So it's up to staff here to go to the website to see if anybody from Edwardsburg Cardinal wants to put a store up, because there will be no, the province isn't going to tell us in any other way. So I think we should have a policy as to how we're going to deal with that when the time comes up. But that has really nothing to do with opting in. It's just a note I had.
You know, do you want to weigh in on how the motion should come on the table on the 21st? Do you want to weigh in on that aspect of the discussion?
I think it should be just I guess a resolution. Are we going to do it by resolution?
Yeah,
just do it by resolution, and we show a vote of each council persons to whether they vote in or vote out, and the majority will win.
Okay, Councillor Dillabaugh, do you want in on this?
I'm 100% for it.
Okay.
You Mayor, I was 100% for it from the start, so I'm all in.
Okay, any further discussion? So does that provide enough direction to staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we'll move on. Sorry about that. Okay, item 6 then, now I'm dealing with this severance application, is that? And the briefing note comes with a recommendation for the briefing note. And you can see that this is a kind of a two-part severance. And I think I'm reading right, a number of conditions. So, is there any discussion on the briefing note before I call for someone to move the acceptance of the recommendation? Discussion? Looking for a mover of the recommendation then?
So moved.
Mover is Councillor Cameron. And is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Dillabaugh. And the recommendation is, I'll maybe just read it for the sake of the gallery. The committee recommends that the council recommend in favor of severance application B1 2618 and B1 2718, conditional upon the following. Number A, amendment of the comprehensive zoning bylaw to recognize the deficiency in lot size, frontage, and side yard setback. So the two lots are going to be actually too small to meet the regulatory size. And then the second condition, completion of an engineering study demonstrating the feasibility of continued on-site servicing of both parcels. All right, further discussion, if any, before I call a question?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to ask one question. It seems to be like 3 parts
Yeah, that's a little
on here.
Well, let me just put it to you this way. If you look at the yellow lines, the yellow line basically outlines the first lot, which started at County Road 2 and came down to almost the tip of the point at the river, and then went right straight back to County Road 2, although the yellow line doesn't go back there anymore. And then the next lot to the west of it also ran from County Road 2 to the river. Now what these people are proposing to do is sever east-west rather than north-south. And believe me, after the trouble that we've had in that area over the past couple of years, even though the two lots are smaller than they perhaps should be, it's a much better situation with these two new lots than it is at present.
So what are the 2 lots that are going to be remaining, the blue lot and the yellow and the
Yes,
green lot put together?
yes, I think it's
So it's
the
not 3
blue
instead.
lot is one, and then is there just one other lot, or is there 2 other lots?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, the blue lot will become what the applicant has noted as parcel A is the blue lot. And then what he's noted as severance B will be the yellow and pink together.
Together. Oh,
Yeah.
that's
And
fine.
I apologize for that. There were 2 applications, and I just put the final drawing in front of you rather than.
That was what confused me. It looked like there was 3 lots being created there.
And I guess I knew from the discussions that I had with staff. So, any further questions here? Hearing none, I'll call the vote then on the recommendation. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And just for clarity, so that members understand what's happening here, the township is not the final arbiter here. The final arbiter of severances is the county's planning department. And what we basically do is we make a recommendation, our council makes a recommendation to the county's planning department. Now, it starts with this committee, and had it been a different month of the year, it would have said the CDC committee, which would have been your committee. The CDC committee would have made a recommendation to council, and council would have followed through with the recommendation to county. But as it is now, this recommendation will go directly to council on the 21st, and then, depending on how council deals with it, directly to county or not. Well, even if we don't, it'll still go. So item number 6B on the agenda is the site plan control agreement for Distant Shores. And again, we have a briefing note, and the briefing note comes with a recommendation from staff. Are there any questions with regard to the briefing note before I call for a mover and a seconder of the recommendation? Hearing none, looking for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Councillor Hunter, and seconded by Councillor Cameron. And the recommendation is that the committee recommends that council amend the existing site plan control agreement as requested, conditional upon proof of release of the hydro easement being received from the applicant. And once we receive notice that that hydro easement has been released, then we will approve the amendment, or excuse me, the site plan control agreement amendment, and that puts us in a position to issue a building permit. Is that correct? So I need to call the question, don't I, or did I? No, I didn't. Those in favor of the recommendation?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And then we get to item C, which is the Town of Kearney, a resolution of support, supporting request for the voters list from the municipal election. And so this is a rather weak resolution insofar as all it really calls for is a reestablishment of a multi-stakeholder working group between the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, Ministry of Finance, AMCTO, MPAC, and Elections Ontario in exploring and identifying ways to create and maintain the voters list. And I think you're all aware of the problems that we have with the voters list. So I'm looking for someone to support this, to bring forward a resolution or move a resolution that this resolution be supported. Do I have any takers? Mr. Bradley.
I'll second it, Mayor.
And seconded by Councillor Dillabaugh.
Mr. Mayor, what's the process on this? Do you forward that back to the Township of Kearney and to support their?
That's generally what will happen, and I noticed that there's a number of other municipalities that have been supporting it as well. What is likely to happen is maybe not much, but the point is that the real point of it is that MPAC has been given responsibility for the municipal voters list, and really they're not stepping up to the job, really. Okay, so I've got a recommendation coming forward from this committee to bring this Town of Kearney resolution forward to support at council. Those in favor?
Aye.
It's carried. And item D is the election accessibility report. And this is a very nice little report that staff has put together about the election. A lot of interesting reading here. Interesting thing to me, in 2003, when we had only paper ballot voting, we had 35% turnout. In 2006, there was 46.26% turnout. In 2010 election, there was 47% turnout. 2014 election, that was up to 55.1% turnout. And in this 2018 election just passed, which was also internet, telephone, and paper ballot, there was 53.1% turnout. I'm sure that the question that the staff is going to be asking themselves is it worth holding paper ballot elections? Let me tell you that there's a lot of feeling by a certain segment of the community that does not want us to give up paper ballots. So I wouldn't want us to make wrong conclusions from this report. Does anybody else want to highlight anything else from this report?
Can you pick and choose the days that you, like I'm looking at the page, you
Yes.
know, that has the 2.68, 10 days that you can vote.
Yes?
And those middle days, October the 17th up to the 20th, there's pretty low turnout.
Yes. No, that's all electronic voting,
Oh, it is? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
right? Councilor Hunter?
I think it's a very good report. Just one thing, I wouldn't want people to jump to a conclusion just because you see a jump in certain election years that you get a 7 or 8% jump in the voter turnout. I don't think it really all pertains to whether it's electronic or paper ballot. It depends a lot on what the issue is in an election campaign, whether you, like I know, like 2003, we had 35% with just paper ballot, but I can remember that election, there was no die-hard issue during that election. So if people aren't unhappy or they're not real happy about something, you really don't get a big voter turnout. It's when there's an issue that comes forward, generally within 6 months of what the election is, that comes forward. So I wouldn't want to just take it for granted that we should do that paper ballot isn't important, because the paper ballots are the ones that generally, if there's an important issue, the ones that vote on the paper ballots are the ones that you'll see during those peak times will show up, more of them will show up, so.
And I wouldn't want my comments to be mistaken either. I have a lot of trouble with internet voting because I think it's too susceptible to fraud, but.
Your mayor, really 34% of the paper ballot isn't that bad in 218, I don't think. So
34%?
Yeah, it's 34.7 was by paper ballot, so that's not really that poor,
Yeah, and-
I don't think.
And
That's a third of the ballot, yeah.
Yeah,
Through
so
the chair.
33%, so I mean, keepers.
No, would you just give me your page reference there?
It's on the same page, right below your
Second last
218.53.
Okay.
Of those who voted in 218, 34.7% choose to vote by paper ballot. You see it there?
Yeah,
Mayor?
got it.
And 65 by internet. So, I mean, that's, we still got good numbers.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, so back to the page where you were quoting 2003, 6, 10, 14, and 18. If you go to the very last line there, according to AMO municipal election statistics with 430 municipalities, the average voter turnout of all of those was only 37.66% anyway. We almost hit that with our paper ballot, without the electronic ballot. And our 53.1 is considerably higher than the provincial average. So while we may think that 53 isn't really that high, compared to the rest of the province as an average, it's quite high.
Yes.
So our numbers are actually surprisingly good.
Anybody else want to draw any conclusions or make any observations with this report?
I might just commend our staff in putting it together, because it's a very well put together report. You can pretty well find any piece of information you want, but in there, they have it broken down pretty well, time, hours, types, age, sex, you name it, it's in there. So,
It's amazing when you, now mind you, most of the statistics that they've been able to generate from this, to compile this report have come from the fact that it was internet driven, basically.
One last comment too, with regard to the company that puts it forth, which is IntelliVote. Some of the, as a candidate who used it, and while it might have been very voter friendly from a computer terminal, it wasn't very voter friendly from a telephone or from a regular smartphone or from a tablet. So trying to use our phone at a door to do polling and that sort of thing, there's some inadequacies there that I'd really like to see firmed up if we're going to continue on making that investment for everyone to use. Most people aren't using a hard drive and a large computer anymore. They're using a tablet or a smartphone. and it's not all that easy or as well done on those applications. So maybe putting forth a suggestion to them at some point for improvements for other devices, yeah.
The candidate modules.
Yeah, the candidate modules for sure, yeah, absolutely.
And they've been a problem ever since we started with the candidate module.
Well, especially from a smart device or a tablet, not, you can't have a desktop when you're trying, not everything anyway.
One thing I should give the staff an opportunity to weigh in on here, and I don't, it might have been addressed in the report and I've forgotten it. Did you want to make any comments about the costs of running the election through the internet system and as opposed to an entirely paper ballot world?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we didn't put that in our report, but as you're aware, for the last 2 or 3 elections, we have joined forces with other clerks within the county so that we were able to achieve a better cost from the supplier because, of course, higher volume of voters leads to better pricing. We have typically been putting $6,000 a year in our budget for election expenses for as long as I've been running elections. The dollar amount really hasn't changed that much. So what that tells me is that the cost of the electronic portion is dropping as time goes on, as is the number of people that we use, but the per diem that we pay, of course, has gone up. So I would say that this has saved us money, but I can't tell you exactly how many dollars. I think the other thing, if I may just comment on the discussion about the paper balloting, we have consistently seen between 900 and 950 people voting by paper ballot in every election since we started using electronic. We have not seen a decline in the number of paper balloting, and I certainly would not support taking that option away.
Appreciate that comment, and I know there are others who appreciate it as well. There's one other final question I was going to ask you, and that was this. Did all of the townships in the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville opt for this supplier?
Those that did electronic voting opted for this supplier, but not every municipality in the county does electronic voting, especially the smaller ones, Western, Front of Young. They have so few electors that it's really just not worth it for them to.
And they run a strictly paper ballot?
Strictly paper, yeah.
Okay. But the other 8 have basically gone this way.
And also the separated, Brockville, Prescott, and Gatineau also doing that.
Ah, okay. All right, well, anybody else want to draw any conclusions from this report? Hearing none, I'm about to move on. And item E on the agenda is the check signing authority. There's a briefing note here, and basically we have to change the check signing authorities because of the election. We have a recommendation here that council authorizes all signing officers to sign the banking form and authorizes the mayor and the treasurer to execute that off. That council authorizes all signing officers to sign the banking form and authorizes the mayor and treasurer to execute the banking service agreement with the Royal Bank of Canada. And of course, this is changing the signing authority of the deputy mayor. So, looking for a mover of the recommendation. Councillor Cameron, seconder. Deputy Mayor Deschamps. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And 6F, 2019 cost of living increase. Again, we have a briefing note here, and the briefing note has a recommendation with it. I think everybody's had a chance to read it. I'm looking for a mover to move the recommendation unless there are questions. Okay, I have Councillor Hunter, seconded by Councillor Cameron. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none, I'm about to call the question. Those in favor, please say aye. Motion is carried. And with 6G, the 2018 Works in Progress report. And so, this is the Work in Progress report. And I have a tough time following it, but because I lose track of where we are here. I'm going to start, well, first of all, let me have a look here. So first of all, there is a recommendation, and the recommendation is the council direct the treasurer to carry forward the funds for the Works in Progress projects as identified in this report in order that the Works in Progress projects continue to be funded in 2019. So I'll be calling for that recommendation, but before I do, I have a couple of questions of my own. First of all, this account is 011910. Is that account strictly for Works in Progress?
Correct, it's a general ledger account where any funds that are carried forward to the next year are held in that account, as opposed to be putting into reserves and out of reserves. It's a general ledger account for that purpose only.
Okay, so what I'm having trouble with is that the community improvement plan, that's a grant plan. I was under the impression that it had its own account.
It has an expense account, yes.
But but we've been putting, it seems to me we've been sort of topping that account up to about $30,000 year over year, do we not?
Every year we do place a $30,000 budget line item for grants.
Okay, so now, have we got, well, with this community improvement program, we've got apparently something that's been approved that hasn't been completed yet?
Right.
Okay, so what you're proposing to do is to take that money out of that community improvement grant line and put it into your 011910 account?
Correct.
Ah, okay.
We'll show it as fully expended in 2018,
Yes,
but just move the money into this amounts carried forward so that we don't then have to tax again for it in 2019.
right. Okay, that's,
Change that.
that gets me that one. Now, the official plan review, the account remains in the reserve. So we're not really carrying that forward as work in progress, are we?
We aren't, but I'm identifying the fact that basically we've only expended a portion of the $40,000 that was budgeted. And so that in the 2019 budget, you will see that amount shown as a transfer out of reserves and in the line item for the official plan review in the 2019 budget. So you're gonna see that project carried forward and finished out in 2019.
Okay, so now, why are you doing that one different than the community improvement one?
Difference being is that the project in 2018 was funded by the reserve. In the case of the community improvement plan, that project is funded by taxation.
Okay, gotcha, okay, fair enough. Waste transfer station closure costs. In the note on my sheet says amount transferred into reserve. So that $6,000 is not going to be going into your WIP account, it's going into a reserve account.
Correct, and the reason for that is that there is no plans in 2019 to use the money. So rather than put it into an amounts carried forward, which is really just a breaching year account from one year to next, it's better to place that money into reserves because it may not be used for another few years.
Fair enough, I understand that. Now, the Walker Street final landscaping and paving. Now, you're saying here the amount remains in the reserve. In other words, we haven't taken it out yet.
Yes, we had a budgeted amount to take out of reserves of $450,000, and we have not used the full amount. So the balance of what has to be used in 2019 will be removed in 2019 from the reserve. But it'll just remain in reserve and will be part of the 2019 budget.
Same comment, next line down.
For the storm sewer as well.
And the same amount, oh no, the Gallup Canal Bridge is different, no,
The Gallup Canal Bridge was funded by taxation, so that money will be put into the amounts carried forward and will be used in 2019.
Gotcha. And we'll move to the next page, Cardinal Fishing Dock. Again, you're gonna put it into the WIP account, right?
Correct?
And the $30,000 transferred to the reserve.
Correct. Same situation as the landfill site. There is not an anticipation to use that money in 2019, so it'll go into reserves until such time as that money is required.
Okay, so that's, and the Adelaide Street pumping station upgrade, amount remains in the reserve.
Correct.
And the Cardinal Fire Station 2 study, $15,000, goes into the WIP account.
Correct.
And the Cardinal 401 signage, the $30,000, goes into the WIP account.
Correct.
Okay, so now looking for a motion, looking for somebody to move the recommendation, unless there are further questions, of course. Okay, this moved by Mr. Robertson. And looking for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Cameron. Those in favor? Motion is carried.
Mr. Mayor, is the township responsible for signage on the 401 to indicate that exit is Cardinal?
No, we own the signs that, I don't know whether you've seen them, there's one at the 401 and County Road 22 intersection, and then there's a similar one on 416 that's north and south of Spencerville. It's the decorative signage, not the directional signage.
Just one clarification.
Yes.
Just going back to the 23.5 and the CIP,
Just a minute, no.
the CIP program.
Yes, okay.
Program grants.
Yeah.
The 23.5 that's going forward isn't spoken for, correct? It's not been used.
Nobody
It's-
has applied for funding.
Somebody has or hasn't?
Nobody
Sorry.
has,
Nobody
no.
has. So it's going forward as, to be used for grants and projects, in addition to the 30,000 that will already be
No,
allotted for it?
No, it
In the
will be
2019
funding
budget?
used that was, or it'll be used as funding for applications made in 2018, or in 2019. It won't actually, this year we're not topping up that application, line. We're not seeing, a lot of uptake on the CIP grants,
Okay, so
so,
I was unclear, because in the last discussion, when the mayor was asking, I thought that he asked if that 23.5 had been spoken for and was for unfinished projects. And I thought it was said yes.
no. If I said yes, I didn't intend, that wasn't my intent. The 23.5 has
So it's-
not been
it's-
spoken for.
Yeah, because then I think the discussion went that normally we topped it, or we put it up to 30,000, right?
Mhm.
So the way that I read this was that we would have the 30,000 plus the 23.5, which isn't the case, correct?
No.
So it'll just be the 23.5 that'll be moving forward, and there won't be a line item, a new line item, or any addition to that for 2019?
No, there'll be it's 30,000 because there's the 23.5, there'll be 30,000 and 23.5 will come forward to help fund that 30,000.
Okay.
So it won't be fully
Just be
taxed.
topping it
You
up.
won't be funded by taxation entirely.
So it'll be
in
just
plan.
short to 65 from this year's
Right,
grants?
that's been expended.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, then let me pick up
Sure.
on that, because I'm sort of with you.
Yeah, I thought.
So, does moving this 23.5 into that WIP account, does that deplete the CIP line?
The CIP line will remain at 30,000 for 2019,
But I don't-
but it'll be funded by this year's taxation revenue that we already received.
But I'm not following that argument completely yet. I'm taking, if I go back to, let's say, the 20th of December, was there 23.5 in the community improvement plan available?
Left, yes,
Left. Right
correct.
now, we're taking that entire amount,
Yep,
and moving it into the WIP account.
Correct,
That's gonna deplete that line on December 31st.
right.
All right, now, when we get into the 2019 budget, we're gonna refund that community improvement plan by moving it from the WIP back to the community improvement plan.
Correct.
Okay, and then we're gonna add to it to bring it up to
Up
30?
to 30.
If council chooses,
Hmm?
if council chooses.
Yeah, I know, I understand, but I just wanna get the process.
Yeah,
Thanks very much.
so in my mind, the way that I was reading it, it would end up at 53.5.
53.5,
Yeah, and then when the mayor asked, I thought somewhere that 23.5
It's a
had been.
top-up. It
had been
used to be
spoken
like
for.
that.
No, not as a top-up, but
Yeah.
that it had been spoken for, just not awarded, or not paid out.
Right, no, there's been no applications made other
Good.
than the ones that were made.
Thank you.
Yes, so are you saying that only $6,500 was spoken for last year in
Correct.
2018?
Correct.
Oh.
Yes, and.
Out of the 30,000?
And I should point out,
Wow.
I should, just for the benefit of some members of council, and I have to keep repeating this to myself because I gotta keep myself cognizant of what we're doing here. We have 2 community improvement plans as permitted by the municipal act. And a community improvement plan basically requires that we have a geographic area. In other words, we have to identify the geographic area. And within that geographic area, we're allowed to spend public taxpayer dollars for specific purposes outlined in our plan. So we've gone through the public process of creating these 2 community improvement plan areas. We've spent about 3 to 5 years now promoting the fact that these plans exist and actually doing a very extensive outreach program to get people to apply to them. And we can use the money that's in those plans for such things as building exteriors. What other reasons can we use it for? Building exteriors, what?
Upper floor apartments?
Upper floor apartments, rejuvenation of upper floor apartments, windows, doors, that kind of thing. So it is a bit disappointing when we know that only a small amount of it has been applied for in 2018. It is a bit disappointing. Now, council will at some point have to deal with how they want to address that program, that issue, because I can tell you that in some municipalities, they've been able to go the ultimate step of declaring their entire township or their entire municipality to be a community improvement plan area. Not necessarily a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing, and a very extensive public hearing process required. But maybe we might be able to tweak the program a little bit to get more people interested in applying to the money that's there. Because the whole concept here is to try to beef up and improve the appearance of our small urban areas. Okay, so I call the question and the motion has been carried. So moving on to item number H, which is the 2019 budget. And so this is the first stab, and I'm going to say, first of all, a few words of introduction. So first of all, I'm going to tell the staff this, and I don't mean to offend anybody in any way, but when I see a $1.7 million deficit, I'm saying to myself, why did you do this? Now, I want the council members to know that as chair of the meeting, I know that I'm responsible for the agenda of the meeting, and I'm also responsible for the materials that are brought forward. However, in this case, of this first draft, I was not fully aware of how the presentation would look. Staff hadn't shared that with me. And I didn't know that they'd be bringing forward a first draft projection of a $1.7 million deficit. So I'm a bit disappointed, but I know we'll work our way through it. I want to try to start this discussion by putting a more favorable light on things. 2019 is the year that we've been anticipating for some time, because this is the year when the township will first feel the full year impact of the new giant tire construction, which is adding $87 million to our assessment base. And that $87 million added to our assessment base will bring in more than $600,000 in additional revenue without any increase in our tax rate. I think that's a really good news story, and I'm asking council to work with me to kind of provide some firm direction to staff for the preparation of the second draft of the budget. I'm going to be looking for consensus on a number of issues here, so that we can kind of tighten this thing up fairly quickly. At this first meeting, I'm going to focus on a few broad issues, and I'm going to try to approach things from a fairly simplistic point of view. I want to first of all turn to the 2019 draft budget summary. And this 2019 draft budget summary tells me a lot of things. And I want to make sure that everybody's got the right page, everybody's looking at the right thing. So I'm going to say, does everybody have the page that says 2019 draft budget summary for the year 2019? And then I'm looking at the revenue section where it's talking about taxation revenue. And the numbers going across start with 4,942,000, 4,949,000, 5,581,000. Does everybody have that page?
Yeah.
We're going to focus on that page for the next few minutes.
Page one. Page one.
Page one.
Make sure I have it as well.
Need everybody there.
There you are.
Yeah, right after the pink sheet.
Oh, yeah, no, you gotta look at it.
Okay, now, the things I want to first of all point out are this. If you look at, and I'm just looking at taxation revenue, the very first line, I want to go across that first line with you. The 2018 budget called for 4,942,000 of revenue. It actually brought in 4,949,000. And the draft 2019 budget is for 5,581,000, which is a difference of 638,000. That's the 638,000 that results from the increase in the assessment base. The interesting thing is that we saw some of that money come in last year. No, let me rephrase that. Not some of that money, because that's 2019 money. We saw some impact from that assessment accrue to us last year. Go down to the next line, which is called supplementary taxation revenue. And in that line called supplementary taxation revenue, we were budgeting to receive $200,000. The treasurer knows that between the time that we receive our tax rolls, our assessment rolls, and build our budget, MPAC will give us supplementary tax rolls, which enable us to send out supplementary tax bills. And we had anticipated that we would receive around $200,000 in supplementary tax bills in 2018, and we actually received $442,000 in supplementary tax bills in 2018. Now, we will not see that again in 2019, and the treasurer is telling us she only expects to receive about $70,000 in supplementary taxation. But if you add those first two numbers, the 5.5 5,581,000, and the 70, that's a significant increase in taxation revenues coming to us over what we received in 2018. And I'm going to ask this question, and I'd like to have a response from everybody. I want to know how many members of council feel that some portion of that, I don't want to call it a windfall because it's not, but some portion of that excess, not going to call it excess revenue, some portion of that goodwill, I'll call it that. How many members of council feel that some portion of that goodwill should be directed back to the taxpayers through a reduction in our tax rate? There's one. Now, let me go another step. I'm going tomorrow, and I've got the briefing package already, county council budget. County council is going to benefit to the same large extent, because this increase in assessment, $87 million, is a big increase in assessment to the county, let alone to our township. The county leaving their 2018 tax rates in place would see also a commensurate windfall. And the treasurer has indicated that for her to get to a revenue neutral tax rate, which means that she's not taking over advantage of this windfall, she would have to reduce the county tax rate by 3.73%. And county council will be debating that, because almost every year, county council has determined that they will not ride on the phase-in, they will ride on the growth. So, leaving that hang as a question for now, and I'm going to go down through some of these other numbers here. The grants in lieu were budgeted to come in last year at 1.139. They actually came in at 1.208. And the treasurer is telling us that she anticipates 1.187. Now, that's a reduction of about $20,000. Is that just a guess? And can you tell me which grants and why you think that that reduction will appear?
To answer that question through the chair, if you go to the detailed section, there is a complete breakdown of the grants and lieu taxation line by line to see.
Okay, so now get me to that sheet without losing me.
So right after this first summary, the next detailed sheet, it says 2019 draft departmental budgets. The very first page is the revenue breakdown.
The very first page,
Yeah,
the grants and lieu.
yeah.
Okay, and so I've got my two numbers that I'm looking here, and the grants and grants in lieu. You're telling me 1.20. See, I'm not. I've got grants in lieu, and I've got grants, but I don't see 1.208 anyplace.
So the combination of the grants in lieu and grants Ontario is that 1.2.
So that's at the 590 at the top and the 851 at the bottom?
Correct.
Or on the year-to-date actuals, it would be the 571 at the top
Correct.
and the 851 at the bottom?
Correct.
And then the draft 2019 would be the 590 at the top and the 851 at the bottom.
Correct.
So penalty on taxes, you're seeing the drop a bit by 35,000?
Correct, and the basis of that estimate for penalty on taxes is a 5-year average. And the fact that I've reduced it from the 2018 because we had a lot of outstanding receivables. I currently have our receivables at about $770,000, which is the lowest it's been since 2013.
And that's at what number?
770,000.
Okay.
Last year, we were at 1.1 or 1.2.
Right,
We were quite high.
right.
And I have reduced that receivable down to 770, so I don't anticipate as much penalty receivable being calculated on those outstanding.
Okay, now I don't want to get off the topic here, but first of all, I appreciate the work that must have been required to get it down to that extent. Was it mainly through agreements or collections?
A combination of both, for sure. Aggressive collection, but working with taxpayers to make sure that we have continual money coming in, which means that the interest gets lower, the principal gets lower. So I'm not going to be charging as much interest in comparison to other years. And this is more reflective. The 155 is more reflective of the years we were at that 800,000.
Okay, so I can certainly understand that number. And so the federal grants in lieu, not much change.
No.
The Canada Post provincial grants, the Hydro One grants, Ontario Power Generation grants in lieu. So all of the main thrust is that 35,800 reduction in tax arrears,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that makes me very comfortable with your 1.187 from the first page that we were on, and then the Port of Johnstown. So now I'm very comfortable at 7.596 as revenue. Does anybody have any questions before I go on from there? Go ahead.
Through the chair. Until we know what the provincial grant drops from the 851.4, I mean, I don't think that number is going to stay the same. I'm pretty sure that that's going to go a fair bit, or at least lower. Then he's made it pretty clear that, you know, there will be cuts coming. He just hasn't said what they are. So I think that revenue number is definitely going to be lower than the 7,596. I don't know that it's putting it in as the draft budget for the 851. Yes, that's what it's going to be, but we don't really know what that number is going to be yet, right?
Okay, now the only thing I can say in response to that is that the letter from the Minister of Finance and subsequent conversations have indicated that there's a comment along the line that we should get the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. Is that the OMPF number?
Correct?
Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund? That's the OMPF. And if I could just talk about that line for a minute. The province has reduced that line from around 15 or 30 million a few years ago down to, what am I at now, 5 million now? No,
510.
500 million.
Yeah.
Yes, down to 500 million. Now, the Minister of Finance has said we should get the program back funding what it was intended to fund, rural and northern communities. So we're a rural community. I'm hoping that if he wants to cut another million or so out of his 500 million, that he'll take it off the places like Brantford and Burlington and Hamilton, and not the small and rural municipalities. And I can imagine that it will be at least 60 days before we're gonna know the result of that. But I don't think we can do much other than leave the 851 in place right now until we see where it ends up. And then we're gonna have to juggle from there. But I think your point is be warned that we can see a reduction there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Okay, now, let's go on down and look at the operating expenses. And this is where I have some pretty serious concerns. Because our budgeted operating expenses, looking to the bottom line, were budgeted to be 5.7 million. And I'm told, or we're told here, that we're at 5.632. And what is the effective date for that 5.632?
It's at the end of the year. I printed this as of January 3rd, this
Yeah.
particular report. That's whatever's been put into the system by January 3rd. I do know, however, that there is a final pay period that hasn't been accrued back into this year. It was paid out in January, but it has to be accrued back. That's about 80,000, roughly.
80?
Yeah.
Yes.
roughly. And then the report that was recently, that was in this package, the WIP report, all of those amounts will still have to be put into here. I have not done that journal entry until after this report is being authorized by council. That's a certain amount of money as well. So and I know there's still accounts payable invoices that are being processed for the balance of 2018. I don't know the dollar values of those, but there's still money that's going to be spent.
Okay, so we know that our expenditures
We'll be close to what our budgeted operating cost is.
they'll be above 5.6.
For sure.
At least, 80,000 in payroll brings it up to 5.7,
7.
right?
Yeah.
Right, so now we're only a few,
And by the time you add some WIP in there, you're probably close to the 5.75,
Right.
5.76.
okay, so now I'm having trouble with the next column, which is the budget for 2019, because now here, our operating expenses go from 5.7 to 6.1, which is $375,000 increase in operating expenditures, 6.67%, and I be honest with you, personally, that chews up over half of the $638,000 that we received from the $87 million increase in assessment. And, I mean, I just don't think we can let that happen. I mean, I'm looking at all of these various accounts, and I don't know what's happened here. What has happened that our operating expenses would balloon to that extent? And I'm looking for consensus here from the staff, from the council, to provide direction to staff to go back to these details. And unless the individual council members want to go back through the individual accounts, but I think that our first job is to direct staff to go back to those individual operating accounts and direct staff to come in with a closer budget, a budget that is closer to where we ended up in 2018, and maybe a 1 or 2% increase, but not a 6.67% increase. And I'm especially worried, I'm going to say this out loud, I'm especially worried at what's happened in that public works budget, which is $148,000 over its budget, 8.67%. It's a lot of money.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, the percentage numbers are not stated. I don't know, maybe it's the title. variance to the 2018 budget. Actually, the percentage numbers are the percent as compared to the 2018 year-to-date actuals. And what the 19 budget is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So say that again, Mr. Bradley?
Well, the percentage figures, for example, 6.67 down at the bottom of the page,
Yep.
is the percentage of the 19 draft budget to increase to the 2018 year-to-date column. It's not the percentage over the 2018 budget, but the title says variance to the 2018 budget. So it's just a little bit of semantics there, I guess, but not that it's a
No,
huge.
because, well, just a minute now, hang on.
We'll do the calculation.
No, the title at the top says variance to 18 budget. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at against the line on the left
That's not the
hand.
right number. The percentage is 6.48, if you want to do the calculation.
It's against the.
So how did that happen? What happened there?
This is strictly the system, so whatever the system's calculating, I
It's
think.
using different numbers to do the calculation, that's all. It's
No,
actually-
but the title at
It's
the
the
top is wrong.
Yes,
Yeah, it's variance to the actual.
It's variance to actual.
yes.
The dollar value is variance to budget.
The
The
dollar
pers-
is
is
variance
variance
to
to
budget.
Yes. the dollar.
Oh,
But the percentage is
But
variance
the,
to
but the percentage is the variance to the actual.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, just to point that out, because
It's
in this case, 648 to 667 is not gonna make a huge difference, but.
It's very-
okay, so I need some comment here. My feeling is that this is where we start by providing direction. I don't want to start by giving away $375,000. Not giving it away, I mean, our staff will always find room for it, but I don't want to start our 2019 discussions $375,000 behind, well, not behind, but I don't want the whole 375 go to operating, let's put it that way. There's never an end to operating. Go ahead.
When we gave instruction for the draft preparation,
I don't think we did,
we didn't.
no.
So it's obvious that it's been budgeted for an increase in, for some reason, in my mind, we had decided that we were going to do a budget based on zero increase. I don't know why I have that in my head, but I had that in my head.
Yes, and I think for sure, in all our minds, we had a budget that was based on no increase in the tax rate.
Right.
But no increase in the tax rate gave us 638,000 extra.
Right, but the budget that we're looking at is 1.7 higher,
Yeah.
which then would result in having to increase
Yeah.
taxation.
Yeah.
So to me, in my mind, I and maybe I just dreamt it, but I thought that the instruction was based on what we thought as a group, that it was going to be based on no increase or the possibility of a decrease.
Yes, and the other point that we did have discussion around was some portion of the anticipated 638 increase going directly to reserves. And I don't know that we provided enough direction for that. Because what I would like to do, and I think the way that we should proceed here, is that we should first of all instruct the staff to get the operating expenses more in line with 2018 numbers. That's the first thing. And then, having done that, we should provide some direction as to where we would like to see increases to the reserves. And then, having done those two things, then we'll start looking at our capital. I don't wanna start looking at capital till I know that our operating budgets are acceptable, all parties, all around. Not everybody's gonna be happy, but we have to come to an agreement someplace. Get the operating budgets established. Get what number of the 638 is gonna be going to reserves and where it's gonna be going. And then let's start talking about capital. And when we start talking about capital, we'll start talking about how we're gonna finance the capital. Because some of the financing of capital can come from reserves, some of it can come from other, can come from reserves, some of which might be the gas tax fund, but I think we've pretty much used up that report, or that reserve on Walker Street. So, first question, do I have any consensus around an instruction to get these operating budgets more in line with 2018 actuals? And would anybody care to weigh in on what percentage of an increase you'd be willing to tolerate over the 2018 actuals? And by the way, you don't have to accept the 2018 actuals. You can provide direction that there be cuts made. And I know the staff doesn't like to hear that, but
I highlighted, Mr. Mayor, 5 key lines and subsets in this first page. Administration is one. You can see there's 32,000. It's kind of an interesting number, but we can come back to that in a minute. Public Works, stormwater management, curbside waste, and recreation. Those are the sort of the big tallies in there, contributing to the 375.
what are they again, Mr. Bradley?
Where are you, Mr. Bradley?
I'm on page 1, after the orange page.
Okay.
The 3 lines that I highlighted are administration. This is under the operating expense.
32,605 increase.
Yep. Public Works.
148,935 increase.
Yeah. Stormwater management.
121,835, yes.
Curbside waste and recycling.
19,747.
And the recreation facilities.
What's the recreation facilities? 26?
It's 175.
Okay, and I don't want to get into,
I don't want to get into the details of it right now, but those 5 sort of subcategories are contributing the majority of the 375. So I think what we need to do is scrutinize those until we get to the level of satisfaction that we feel comfortable with. And so I did a little bit of work on, just on the administration side, and I don't think staff doesn't need to respond to all of this right now, but for example, of the, and this goes over into the section after the blue page there, environmental budget.
so now you're on the draft departmental budgets?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
For administration, which is at page 3 in
Page 3?
So, in the briefing note that goes along with this package, it indicates that there are some increases to the Homer's CPI and some CPP increased contributions and labor contract contributions and so on. So if you look at the salary line, though, we have 24,180 on the salary line.
Now, just a minute, because I'm not with you.
Okay, it's 17,500, the sub-account is 17,5102.
Got it.
There's 24,180 increase on the variance line.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a 2.29% increase in Homer's CPI and a 1.75% contract increase. And I don't know if I'm dealing with the right numbers, but I assume I am. It's on the salary base, so that's a 4.04% increase, which is $15,800. So where does the balance of the 24,180 come from? That's just an open question.
Pay grid? Increases in the pay grid?
Well, could be, I don't know, but those are the kind of answers I think council's gonna need. Is the, I think we may need to get into the bones, down into the weeds on some of these numbers, because if the combined CPI contract increase is only 15,008, why is it 24,180?
But
Now,
just
there
hang on
may
a
be,
second.
there may be salary
Those two-
increases, I don't know, skip.
Yeah, but just a minute. Because your 2.29 and your 1.75 are not cumulative. They don't add.
Yes, they do. If they're on the same base, they do.
No, because the 2.29 is the Omer's, just a minute now, it's the CPI increase.
If it's on the same base number, they
May
you
I,
can add them.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor?
that's what you're saying, yeah. Go ahead.
The 2.29% salary increase across the board in the admin department does not include the 1.75, that is only union. So it's strictly at 2.29.
So it's not the same base.
No.
No, okay, I
So-
understand that, yeah.
So if you do the combined percentages, you'll come up with numbers somewhere in the neighborhood of $16,000.
Right, and then there are
And some
incremental.
additives, there may be salary increases for grid,
That's correct, and that's essentially where that
Yeah.
24,000 comes
but
from.
all I'm pointing out is that that's the type of analysis I think that has to be done.
Well, and, you know, if we accept the fact that 2018 has been, the 2018 departmental budgets have been controlled as tightly as possible. If we start from the premise that the 2018 departmental budgets have been controlled, tightly controlled, maybe then we can tolerate a 2% increase. But I don't have I've got to hear more comment about the 6.67. I'm looking for consensus to send this back to staff and have staff bring this back with a better number.
Another comment that I had when I was looking at this over the last couple of days is that increase in taxation revenue that we got because of the phase-in plus Giant Tiger, that's not just a one-time increase. That's gonna come. I mean, it's not gonna be an increase, but that level, that changes the level now, okay? So it's like a notch up in terms of our revenue. And that's gonna continue for future years. So I think it means that we've gotta be very careful how we use those increase, this first year of notch up.
Yes.
Because
That's
we're
my
gonna
point
get, we're gonna
exactly.
get money in following years,
Yeah.
which is gonna aid us in our various programs and so on, that will maybe ameliorate that idea of, oh, we can't do it this year.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of, if you go through the rest of this, there's a lot of meat in here that's brought into 2019 that could be discussed and decided upon as whether or not we move ahead with it right now, or whether we delay it or defer it or whatever.
Well, I'll tell you, that's one of the things that hit me pretty heavily when I saw the 1.7. My goodness sakes, if $638,000 has just disappeared and we're at a 1.7 deficit, we better be extremely careful with what we're doing this year. And I'm almost at the point of thinking that maybe we should clean up some of the WIP work in progress that we started in 2018, get that cleaned up before we mount much of a capital program for 2019. But let's wait and see what the staff can come back with on their operating budgets before we make that decision.
I would suggest that maybe we could look at something like a 2.5% increase in operating expenses. I mean, this is kind of inflationary and CPI
And
index
I know,
and
but
all that kind of thing.
I can't help but think that even within the 2018 operations budget, maybe could be a little bit, maybe there could be a little bit of tightening too.
Could be.
I'm not hearing anything from this end of the table. Dental.
Well,
Maybe that's why I'm not feeling good.
oh, sure, blame it on something.
6.67. Your mayor, yes, no. I thought I wasn't reading it right, actually, when I got it Friday. I just don't understand how we did that all in 1 year. All this money, the increase that we went into. So I'm not pleased at all. And I would love to see if you can't come back at least 1.75 to 2%. That's my feelings
On the operational
on the
budget.
operation part,
That'll drop it down to
and not 6.67.
2% drops it down to 150.
I would be happy with 2%, but I have some questions as
So just let me get,
Yeah.
I've got 1.75 over here.
to,
Okay, 2. Where are you? Aaron?
Yeah, two seems reasonable to me.
2%.
Yeah.
Councillor Hunter?
I'm basically at the cost of inflation between 2 and 2.5, where the cost of inflation, I think the
2.6.
pay grid figure is down to 2.29, so that's the cost of inflation. I'm satisfied with the cost of inflation. I think the big thing is here, when you really start looking at numbers here, even with the operating budget and the expected revenue, we got $1.4 million. If we went at that operating budget, what revenue we got coming in, and we're supposed to be behind 1.7 or something, so that means there's $3 million in capital and money going back into reserves, that we're putting money back into reserves, from what I can see, was taken out of reserves last year to fund projects. So what we're trying to do is put the money back that was spent last year, plus put money back in for this year, and that's where we're running into this big deficit, because we're trying to fund last year's budget and this year's capital budget both one time. Last year's budget basically wasn't funded. It was pulled out of reserves to do the capital projects. Now we're trying to put it all
Yeah.
back in 1 year, and we can't do it.
Right, and just to respond to that, you're exactly right, because we knew when we took on the Walker Street project that it was a major project. We knew that we had, we went to a dozen different sources to get the money for that project, but it was just felt that we did it for 2 reasons, and I want to explain what those 2 reasons were, just so everybody's on the same page. The first reason was because the infrastructure under the street was failing badly, and it had to be replaced. The second reason was we had tried 3 times, three times I think,
3 or 4?
3 or 4, to get, now, what was the OCIF?
OCIF.
OCIF, Ontario Community Infrastructure Funding money. Now, when the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund was devised, the government put X numbers of dollars into the pot, and they divided it this way. They said, half of that pot we will distribute to all municipalities according to population. The other half will be available by application for specific projects, water and sewer being top priority. we've made 3 different applications to that and got turned down every single time. So we thought, what we will do, we'll do Walker Street. That will indicate to the province that we're serious about our programs and that we are prepared to put our money where our mouth is, but that we need help with the County Road 2 project. Now, to be honest with you, Councillor, I'm almost worried now because we do have an application in for OCIF funding for the County Road 2 project, which is a $2 million project. I'm really worried that if we get that money, I'm not gonna go beyond that statement. Let's get this budget in order first. Let's get this budget in order. So, having said that, I'm hearing a strong consensus that we send this back, looking for something around the 2% level, increase in the operating budgets. A challenge to staff to tighten things up there. I know that there's one other area that staff wanted me to address here tonight, and it comes in someplace in the briefing note, and it has to do with the cost of the garbage bags. And I know that they would like to hear from us on that. I'm gonna just bring that up for a short discussion. And right now, we're selling garbage bags, I think, at $2 a piece. And the staff is, I'm just looking for it, where is it here?
Page 6,
What is it?
page 6 of the executive summary.
Yes, here it is, here on page 6 of the briefing note. That curbside waste? Yes. The second bullet point under curbside waste and recycling. An increase of $6,200 mainly due to the CPI increase in the contract. No increase in the current bag price is included in the 2019 budget. The solid waste report in August 26 recommended that the township establish a benchmark goal of full cost recovery of curbside collection by 2020. Staff is recommending a 50-cent increase in bag cost to cover the increase of $6,200 at a minimum and reduce the taxation subsidy to the reserve. Now, I need to hear some discussion about the 50% increase in the bag cost.
50 cents.
50 cents, 50 cents.
25% increase.
Yeah, you're right.
To 25%.
Yeah. So, what are your feelings? I need to go around the table on this one.
Well, may I start, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Through the chair. What, I guess I'm going to ask staff for a supposal here. In 2020, what do you anticipate the price of the bags to be in 2020?
Through the chair, if I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah,
The expectation would be that there would be a further increase of 25 cents a bag in 2020, and that would get us to full cost recovery. So that would bring it to $2.75.
so you're going 2 steps.
You see, we're dealing with two different areas. We're dealing with an urban area and a rural area.
Yeah.
And if you increase the price of the bags too high, the rural area is going to quit buying bags, and they're going to take their garbage out in the back 40 and burn it, where they can do things like that. Or they have the privilege of burying it. Where in the urban area, the built-up areas, we don't have that privilege. We can't burn. We can't do a lot of things. We don't have the room to bury things. So it's unfair to increase the price of the bags to the urban area, because the way I look at it is you're subsidizing the rural area.
That's right. If I
So-
may respond to that?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, but I'd like to keep the discussion so that it's, yeah, through the chair.
Thank you. I understand the point that you're making, but I know from driving down rural roads every day, people put out 2, 3, 4, 5 bags a week. I struggle to think that there's any less garbage being put at curbside in the rural area. And as well, I would point out that more expensive to gather up garbage in the rural area by virtue of the fact that the truck has to drive that much further. We do not see an increase in bylaw enforcement with respect to burning or garbage in the ditches as a result of bag tag increases. And potentially, if your point is taken, then what you're suggesting is that we should be charging less to the urban area and more to the rural area. That's a discussion that could be had.
Well, yeah, but I don't think we can get into the discussion that somebody in Hyman Road pays less for their bag or different for their bag than somebody in Spencerville. We can't get into that. A bag is a bag is a bag is a bag. And we are one of the only townships that does provide curbside pickup. And to the benefit, really, of our township that we do it. Because we are a large township, we have over 200 kilometers of road, and we do provide that weekly service. And, you know, when you look on it, as the staff has given it to us here, total cost of one bag, total annual cost of one bag, $104. I mean, really, it's not much, $2.11 per week. It's not a lot of money.
No,
And you know what, maybe I should have, maybe I got A before B or B before A here, but by bringing this up now, I wanted to give the staff some direction as where the council head was sitting. But remember, I've also held the question of, and I'm gonna come back to it, how many feel that a percentage of that 638,000 should be going back to the taxpayer in the form of a tax reduction? So you wanted in, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, absolutely.
well, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, I
with
guess
all due respect.
sorry, Councilor's not finished.
Go ahead, you're not done.
I haven't-
Absolutely.
I haven't,
Sure.
no, I was not indicating that one area should pay more bags for bags than others. That was not the intention. All I want to do is see a fair and equal garbage collection system throughout the entire township. And there was a time when the truck was only being half filled in the rural area. I talked to the driver. I know that for a fact. But that was then, this is now today. But what I'm concerned about here is the statement that full cost recovery
Of the contract,
of the contract,
yeah.
which the contract is considerable amount.
And
Some of this has to be offset with our taxes. That's what we pay taxes for. And I agree 100%, always have, that yes, we should have a charge for a certain amount of bags. And I've always said, and I said it in my campaign, that I think the first bag should be free, but that just doesn't happen right now. So to you, what I'm concerned about is the full cost recovery on the user, because I just have to ask the question, what is our contract? What is our contract, curbside contract? Just give me a ballpark figure, 300,000, 400,000?
No.
So if that has to be picked up by the user,
Let's just wait till we get the
It's a waste contract. It's 313,
okay.
answer. 313?
313.
So 300.
That's the budget for 19.
Yes, so that $300,000 is a user pay system, is basically what it is, if we're going to go to full cost recovery. Goodness gracious, I was always under the impression that our taxes paid for part of our garbage collection system, whether it be here or where else. I have a problem with the full cost recovery statement, because people in the rural area, they have the privilege of going a different route if they so desire. They haven't done so yet, for the most part. But if it's going to get too expensive, the other way, they're going to go to a cheaper method. And that cheaper method is not available throughout the entire township.
Okay.
That's my rant.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Well, mine was very similar, actually. Through, you know, my little bit of math, at the 270, that results in every single household having a $143 cost.
At what number?
At the $2.70, which per bag, which would result in full cost recovery, right? Is what you said, 270, 275, comes out to 143. So when we're looking at creative ways to spend that 638, if we took everybody's first bag and made it free, and looked at our Clean Yards bylaw that we've been talking about, we've been promoting, we've been pushing at cleaning up. We've taken away our garbage cans outside of some of the arenas because people are already dumping everything out of their vehicles in them. They're overflowing, and it's become an issue for us. We spend days cleaning up our waterfront and our ditches and try to make things better. Why not reward or make it seem like we're rewarding people back with that first bag free? However, then on the second and third and fourth bags that we see put out, put a much higher cost per bag than $2.70. Why not say $5 for your second bag? Your first one's free, but let's say it's up to you to reduce, reuse, and recycle, and put a higher.
Talk about free bag per week?
A free bag per week. That would result in that 143 per household. That would be the full cost recovery, but then increase the cost per second bag. So still have
How would you implement something like that?
So your first bag goes out for free. You no longer have a township bag that goes out for the first one. Only the second one that goes out on curbside. So when
You're still raising the price.
yeah. So you're actually still getting more for your second bag, but you're rewarding everyone for not, actually not throwing their garbage in the ditch and throwing it out their windows. You're saying you're getting your first one for free. You don't have to go and buy the first bag.
But just a second, now, we have a contract with a contractor.
Mm-hmm.
And the contractor we can't expect a contractor to be doing our financing for us. Our contractor has instructions that he doesn't pick up any bag that doesn't have a township logo on it. Now, you can't expect him to and remember, he has a number of employees working in a number of trucks in a number of different jurisdictions. And an employee may be working in our jurisdiction today and some other jurisdiction tomorrow. You can't expect him to, when he's in Edwardsburg Cardinal, remember that at my house, one bag doesn't have to be a township bag, but the second one does. You gotta think of the mechanism here. I don't know what the mechanism would be to provide everybody with a free bag per week.
Just let them put one bag out with not in the township bag.
And so then it's up to the truck driver to determine.
No.
No,
We tell, when we rewrite the contract, which is gonna come due, when we do that, that's when this goes into effect. We just have it that we want to take the garbage out.
And so now you're
But-
chewing up this whole $313,000 contract is right back on the tax roll.
And that's, and as far as I'm concerned, that's where it should be.
Well, unless you're using, the way that I'm saying it, is unless you're using a second bag, your second bag is considerably higher cost than what it is now. So if that, those that choose to put more out would actually then be paying even more.
And would you two fellows that are speaking this way, would you rather do that than give a reduction in the tax rate? Can't do both.
Well, I think by having, you're actually giving a better service, right, which.
No, the service is the same. Guy comes and picks up the bag.
Well, it's costing you less for that service. If you're not having to go to the store to pay the $143 and you're getting it for free, you've got your reductions or free garbage pickup. I think you get a lot of bang for your buck in the political world if something's for free and you're not having to go to the convenience store at 5 minutes before the dump truck comes to pick up your garbage and actually them not have bags in stock.
Councillor Hunter, you went in here.
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, because I've been around this table too long, Edwardsburg Township tried this years ago by giving out 50 free tickets to every household. It didn't work. It was just a disaster for us. We scrapped it.
Why, can you tell us why?
Because people lost tickets, they come back in, said they hadn't got their tickets. Other ones changed tickets, they copied tickets, they tried everything under the sun to get away without paying it, and our carriers just went nuts over it. So, what was it, you were here, Deborah, what did our cost? They jumped, our contract skyrocketed every time we went to get a contract over it, so it just doesn't work. You either do it one way, or it's either totally free, or you pay for your bags. I used to pay for your bags, that's the only way you keep recycling going. If it doesn't cost you nothing to set it out at the curb, there's lots of, you watch the truck driving around the streets now, there's lots of houses that go by, they'll have a bag out every second week or something. There's a free bag every week, every house will have a bag, because if you didn't put a bag out, your neighbor will set a bag out for you. Make sure that there's a free one there. So.
I like this scenario.
Mr.
I only
Mayor.
put one bag a week.
The only point I'm trying to make here is this, that if we increase the price on garbage or whatever other item it might be, people are going to find a way to reduce the cost to them. You're either gonna have dumping in the ditches, which may or may not happen, or things along these lines. I just don't want to see it funded totally by the sale of something where.
Okay, so just hang on a second though, because we're getting two concepts mixed up here.
Correct.
We started out with the concept of a 50-cent increase in the bag, and that somehow got hit, the briefing note rolled us into full recovery, and I don't think we should be there. Let's get away from that full recovery concept and get that off the table. Can we get that off the table? We're not talking full recovery here. We're either talking, I'm gonna make it easier now, we're either talking 50 cents or a quarter. We're not gonna go to full recovery. So what kind of a response do we get to increase the bags by 25 cents? Do I get 10 cents? What do I get? 15 cents? Councillor Hunter.
Through the chair again, even if we talk 50 cents, and I know if we raise them 50 cents a bag, you're talking instead of $20, you're paying $25 for a bunch of bags when you go in. And I can guarantee every one of us will get called out over the first week. After that, you'll never hear from them, because $2.50 is a Starbucks coffee, so.
Yeah.
Let's get real here, people. $2.50 to have somebody pick your garbage up at the door, rather than years ago when you got 2 or 3 bags of garbage. You had to get in your car, and it was 20 below out on a Saturday to drive to the garbage dump, to wait in line to dump it and make sure you had your recyclables out. It's not a no-brainer to me to have, even if it cost me $5, if I have 2 bags to put out for the week. And I might add too, I do take a little exception to Councillor Cameron's suggestion that the rural people are the ones that are going to be dumping in the ditches and burning and burying, because
No, I'm
I
saying
was on
they have
council
the
a long
opportunity.
No, he's speaking.
I was on council a long time, and Deborah can vouch, there's a lot of the bags of garbage we picked up in the ditch when we traced them back didn't come from the rural. They're in the rural, but they didn't originate in the rural.
Well, I wasn't,
I'm with you on that.
I certainly wasn't indicating that what you said was the fact. And it's just, my theory is that if you make things too expensive for people, they're going to find a way to break that cost down. And we do have dumping in the township, there's no question about that.
Okay, so now I haven't heard from Councillor Dillabaugh, and I haven't heard from Mr. Bradley and Mr. Roberts. I want to hear from Councillor Dillabaugh first. And Councillor Dillabaugh, just so that we get everybody back on the same page here, we're talking either 50 cents increase in the cost per bag or 25 cents increase in the cost per bag. We're not getting into all kinds of esoterics here.
Oh, so, okay. Why do we have to increase it?
There we go.
We don't.
Well, you only gave him two options.
Yeah,
Please.
you're right, you're right.
In fairness.
You're right. You're right.
Both of them
You're
were
right.
increases.
He just pulled the third one, he just pulled the third one.
I know, I'm sorry.
Okay, just a minute now, hang on.
I just, if I may, through the chair, Mr. Bradley pointed out the solid waste management line item in the operating budget as one that needed to be attended to. So in addition to the $6,200 extra that we're gonna have to pay for our contract, we're losing $13,000 from our recycling revenue. So if you want us to look at that budget and that line item and bring it down to your 2.5%, we have to either cut costs or increase revenue. In that particular department, our only option is increase revenue.
Thank you. Debbie, that was a real good slant. I will go with the 25 cents.
Thank you very much.
Yes, that was very well done.
Okay, now, these two gentlemen, Mr. Robertson first. Mr. Robertson, I know Mr. Robertson lives in a rural area and he's got a back 40 someplace.
Yeah, I do too, though. But, no, I go 50 cents. But you know, the province is on the verge of banning organic waste. Okay, there's articles on the internet right now, 2018 late, that there's looking at ways of banning organic waste. Many municipalities, by the way, have already started collecting organic waste in a separate container. Okay? So this whole issue of waste and recycling and garbage and collection and who does it is all up in the air. And we don't know where the direction is gonna go in the province, but it's gonna go to more enforcement and more restriction, that's for sure. I'm good with 50 cents. Like I say, I only put one bag a week out, there's only two of us. I like his idea because, you know, I could get it for nothing.
Okay,
Not just that.
okay, so, Mr. Robertson.
You're right about that. If you watch CTV News in Ottawa, they're talking about all the different bins, and you have to sort everything out. And to me, it's a bloody nightmare. But anyway, I'd be happy with 50-cent increase.
Okay, so, I don't wanna belabor this. But I'm hearing a consensus around a bag increase. I'm gonna let the staff sort it out what they heard. They know that they've got a consensus of direction on the operating budgets. But I just want to address Mr. Bradley's comment about the province banning organics. And I just want to relay to you something that I learned from the trip to Windsor, I think, I can't remember. Talking to the Vice President of Greenfield. In Quebec, the Quebec government has taken a stand and banned organic waste from landfill sites. They set a date, the date was here. 27 municipalities in the region surrounding the Varennes plant, the Greenfield Varennes plant, went together and banded together and formed a consortium to collect the organic waste. And between that consortium and Greenfield and the province of Quebec, they built a digester in association with the corn processing plant at Varennes. And that digester will now be the receptor of all of that organic waste from those 27 municipalities. And Greenfields ends up as the beneficiary because they end up with a source of heat, which they use in their process. And the province and those 27 municipalities get rid of their organic waste. So if the province is moving in that direction, you can bet that at very high levels, this is already being talked about. And that's probably one of the solutions that will be coming forward at some point. Now, I'm gonna move on beyond this.
To add to your comment, Mr. Mayor, the article I was reading over the weekend, which is on the internet, and it's from the provincial government. The amount of money involved is mind-boggling if they did it province-wide.
In savings?
Yes.
Landfill savings?
In revenue generation and production of heat and all of the offshoots that come from the organic, the collection and processing of organic waste.
Big money.
Big money. If we ever get to the point where we can, ED19 and all that other stuff, we should start looking at putting together an MSC or something.
Okay, well, let's not go down too many roads here tonight.
Oh, Jack, too many meds.
Now, I wanna come back to the last question, and then I think we're going to turn this back to staff. So I need a comment from each of the members here now. And the question was, which of the councillors will support sharing the revenue, $638,000, with the taxpayers in the form of some small reduction in the tax rate, or some large reduction in the tax rate, doesn't have to be small. But I am thinking in terms of a 1 or 2% reduction. I want to know who's in favor of a sharing concept. The staff needs to know that direction.
So I would say until we're certain of the $851,400 from the provincial grants, I would say no reduction.
Okay, so I'm gonna just trying to kind of keep track of these. So you're on hold.
On hold until we know the actual number from the Grants Ontario, yeah. So no actual reduction. Because that could affect that 638 considerably.
Okay, you're on hold. Councillor Hunter.
I think the amount of money that's was pulled out of our reserves last year to keep the tax rate from increasing, I think if we hold our tax rate at 0 this year, we've already given the tax ratepayers the benefit, because they gained the benefit by last year, but the rate not having to jump any more than they did to accomplish the capital works that was done. So I think we have to aim for a 0 rate increase, not a reduction, because every time this council's managed to new councils come in and did a reduction, within 2 years down the road, all of a sudden there was a 4 or 5% increase. So I'd sooner see us stay level instead of trying to drop down.
Okay, hold the rate.
Penalize them.
Hold the rate, excess money to the reserves.
Yeah.
Councillor Cameron.
I concur with Councillor Hunter.
Councillor Dillabaugh.
0% increase.
Hold the rate. You don't want to give any reductions in rate.
No.
Mr. Bradley.
0% increase.
So, say again?
0% increase.
Hold the rate, in other words. And Mr. Robertson.
I'd go with a 0% increase also, but every year after we go through the initial budget, and we just finished December 31st, so there's always invoices popping out and other grants that they discover that accounts receivable, so things could change with these numbers, in another couple of weeks or a month from now.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
We're not quite cleaned up. Okay.
My
Mike,
question's
going
gonna
back
take
in.
us back to the budget summary and clarification on what the 2% that we want the 2% increase to be on.
Okay.
Whether it was based on the 2018 budget or the 2018 actual, but I don't think that's part of what we're talking about, so. I just don't
No,
wanna
but
forget.
if that's where we're going. I mean, I'm finished doing what I wanted.
Okay, so yeah, so the 2% that we gave instruction for them to try to get, our number down to, is that 2% reduction going to be based off of the 2018 budget, or the 28 year-to-date actual numbers that we have in front of us there?
No, we weren't talking about a 2% reduction.
Or
We
a
were
2%
ta-
increase, sorry,
Yeah,
2%
yeah,
increase.
we were trying
Which
to-
number is it based off of?
Yeah, what we were trying to do is to have the operating budgets, have the increase in the operating budgets limited to no more than around 2%, around 2%. And we kind of left that a little bit sloppy. And now, based on 2018 actuals.
Actuals, not the 2018 budgeted
Right.
numbers. Right. So
Yeah.
it'll be based off of the 5.6 as of right now, or the actual, because it's 80,000 higher than this already, correct?
Yeah, which brings it to
A
five
minimum
point
of
seven.
80,000,
A
it's
minimum.
probably closer to 100.
Yeah, so the number's gonna
So
end
it's
up pretty
probably-
close to the actual, right?
Yeah,
They will be very close.
Yeah.
Right.
There's not a whole lot of a change.
Yeah,
yeah. The actual will be very close to the budget.
so,
This number here
right, so
will be very close to that one.
yeah, so I'm just trying to clarify it in my brain too. So the 2% that we're asking them to do will be on the actual, but it's not gonna be the actual with the number that we see in front of us tonight.
Follow it further.
If I may, just for ease of moving forward, because as Mr. Robertson has pointed out, we'll be a few weeks yet before we know our 2018 actuals. Could we please come to a consensus that the 2 to 2.5% will be on 2018 budget?
That makes sense, that's where I'm going.
Okay, so just so you've got a firm place to start.
Yes.
Okay,
That's where I'm going with it, because that number isn't going to stay the same. It
Yeah.
already isn't the same, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
So,
I got you.
right, so why, I mean, it's gonna increase by 80,000, so if you base it off of that, it's already shot before you even
Okay.
start, so.
okay. All right, so that provides a firm sort of ground to stand on.
My only was confusion
Yeah.
as to which one, so
Well,
now we know.
last item. We've got to set some dates for next budget meetings, because not all budget meetings will take place at administrative meetings. And we're hoping that we might be able to do something that we haven't been able to do in some time, because we know that Deputy Mayor Deschamps doesn't work on Mondays.
I do not work on Mondays.
But we know that Councillor Dillabaugh does. So what we'd like to do is, if you get your calendars out, I think the staff would like to propose some dates for additional budget meetings, additional budget meetings. And I know we had some chat the other day, and but I didn't write them down. What were the dates that you were sort of proposing?
The suggestion was, Mr. Mayor, that we potentially have daytime meetings for a couple of these budget meetings, just because our calendars all get very full in the evenings. And so if we could look at January 21st, which is a regular council meeting day, but perhaps we could get together in the afternoon that day, and even bring in supper or something in between the budget and the council meeting.
Okay, so now I'm gonna go first of all to Councillor Dillabaugh. Are you able to get away on a Monday afternoon?
I'll have to see, your mayor, I'll have to check, I just can't, especially in the winter.
Okay,
I will know tomorrow,
okay, so can we pencil it in and then you let us know?
we sure can.
Okay, so we'll pencil in 1 o'clock on the 21st. Now, is that okay with you?
100%.
Okay, and then, everybody's comfortable with that as a possibility?
1 PM?
1 PM. And we'll run that meeting until somewhere around 5 or so, and then we'll have a break before the council meeting at 6:30. All right, now, we're gonna try for a second date.
We're gonna do 1 to 5, right?
We'll pencil it that way. All right, now we're gonna try for a second meeting. And what was the second meeting?
Well, if it's not too much of an imposition on Councillor Dillabaugh, the potentially a second afternoon meeting on February 4th.
And you have a CDC meeting that night
It's fine by me.
at 6:30.
It's fine by me. As
So
long as I
can
know
you
in
check
advance.
both those dates, Counselor Dillabaugh?
I shall do.
Now, the other question I'm going to ask the staff,
Excuse me, Mayor, 1 PM too?
now, if we schedule them from 1 till 5, those are 4-hour meetings. Is that a little bit too long?
Yes.
Well, the
That's
reason-
what I was thinking.
Well, I'm beginning to think
15
maybe
minute
too
coffee
long.
break.
Yeah.
Eh?
15-minute coffee break.
We might, Counselor Dillabaugh, if you could check them out for 1 o'clock, we'll we'll try one at the 4 hours and see how it goes. And we'll see where we go from there. And that gives us 2 more dates to work with. Okay. Now, last thing, I'm just going to indicate to staff what I hope that they will do. And that is this. When we've got the operating budgets tightened up, can you give us the capital? First of all, it's got to come back with a no increase in the rate, and it's got to come back balanced. But the capital has to come back to us in a format where we understand what the project is, and then after we knew what the project is, tell us where the financing is from. But, I mean, the big thing is that we expect to see major increases to the reserves, and maybe this year that's where we're gonna do. We're gonna increase our reserves and not a lot of capital beyond the work in progress completed. So that's it for tonight. I'm worn out. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Oh, just a minute. I'm not at liberty to do that, am I?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Let me have a look here. I've still got an agenda. That's too bad. When you have an agenda, you kind of have to follow it. Item number 7 on the agenda is council inquiries, notices of motion. Does anyone have anything to bring up under council inquiries or notices of motion? None. Right, item number 8 is the mayor's report. So I do have one thing to report. I had a phone call today from Mayor Malanka, and it concerns the business showcase and expo that we've partnered with the Township of Augusta and the Town of Prescott with for the last 4, 5, 6 years. So the Township of Augusta was notified today that David Annabelle's group, PR Professionals, I think it's called,
Yeah, Lisa Brundle.
has rented the Prescott Arena for March this 8th, 9th for a major trade show. And apparently this group has put on this major trade show in Rockville for quite a number of years. But they see an opportunity to put it on in a larger space at the Prescott Arena at a reduced cost. So they're proceeding with a major trade show on March the 8th and 9th in Prescott, and on that basis, Township of Augusta is facing a recommendation that they opt out of the June trade show or expo and trade show. So I just want to get some feeling from members of council. Are you prepared that we just do a joint announcement with Prescott, Augusta, and Edwardsburg Cardinal that the trade show won't happen this year? Or are there any strong feelings one way or another?
Do we have any word from Prescott on how they're?
No, Mayor Malanka is going to talk to Prescott, and this is all exploratory at this point.
What was the date?
March the 8th and 9th, I'm told.
Mayor, I don't really think we're going to go to one in March. Not much sense of having two, one on top of the other. If you're having a major cherry trade show in March for a month and a half, 2 months later, we kind of.
Yes, because ours has always been first or second week of June.
Yeah,
Yeah, too soon after.
I think so.
Yeah.
If we're doing anything, I think later in the fall,
Yeah.
sometime farther away from it.
The other thing, of course, that we have to recognize is the fact that Bill Buckler, who was the sort of the chair of the organization, is no longer the chair. And so there is really a small group that was pretty dedicated last year, but the group was pretty much worn out too. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that up. Item number 9 on the agenda is question period. Are there any questions from anybody present? Hearing none. Number 10 on the agenda is closed session. We have none. So now, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Mr. Bradley, and seconded by Councillor Dillabaugh. Those in favor? And I'd like to thank Councillor Dillabaugh for coming. I know exactly what he feels like.